Hi everyone, my name is Brennan Smith. I'm a water conservation specialist with Aurora Water. I manage our outdoor water assessments program, and I am a certified landscape irrigation auditor through the Irrigation Association. We have a lot to get through, so let's get going on it. The agenda today is we're going to go over system basics, sprinkler head types, controllers and scheduling, common issues and repairs, conducting your own outdoor water assessment, system upgrades, and Aurora Water programs that we offer. So, why do we water? Well, irrigation is less about giving water directly to the plants, more about replenishing the water in the soil so it can act like a reservoir so your plants can tap into it as needed. That reservoir loses water through the plant's functioning, so transpiration, and then also evaporation, so sun, wind, low humidity. As that reservoir gets depleted, plants have a lot less water, can lead to wilting, slow growth, kind of that bad color in the grass you see. In nature, typically that reservoir is getting filled by rain. In Aurora, we have a semi-arid climate, so we're not getting a whole lot of that. It's easy to refill the reservoir, but we really want to think about doing it efficiently. We don't want to overwater. We want to ensure the water is distributed evenly through the landscape. So, what does that exactly look like? Well, here's some efficient watering examples. You can see this is an area where there's some improper scheduling. Some areas are getting overwatered, some areas are watered to the efficient level. Uneven coverage, you can see some areas are really suffering. The rest of it looks good. That one section with the roots not really getting covered. And then proper scheduling, you can see that even coverage, that even distribution. This can be a little tricky if you have some slope in your yard, but there's some things we can do to help that out. Outdoor efficiency best practices, just general 5 good practices for having an irrigation system that works well and is using water like it should. Document your property and irrigation details. We'll go into this a little bit more. Scheduling properly, inspecting your system regularly, so going out at least once a month during the summer, checking everything out, and then repairing and maintaining things as they break. These components do break on your system. That's just part of life here. And then rethinking your landscape needs, considering some turf removal through our turf replacement program, GRIP. If you have some spots in your yard that are, not being used, grass is just sitting there, something to think about. System basics. So we have your home supply here. Water is going to start at the city main. It's running through your water meter into your home service line. So you can see the service line generally runs directly from your meter to your house with a shutoff valve in your basement. You can kind of see that shutoff valve on the right side there. If you don't know where that is, go ahead and do a quick detective work on your house. Check it out, find that valve. It's good to label it too, even. So the irrigation supply, you can see it spurs off the plumbing in your house, usually basement or crawl space, and then goes outside into the system. In older homes, you might find the system is off the main line in the front yard. You might have that valve in front to turn it off. It will have its own shutoff valve that you can use when doing work on the system. You have a leak, or when you turn it off during winter and get your system winterized. So it's connected to your home's plumbing. It does need a backflow device to prevent contaminants from going back into your house from your sprinkler system in your yard. So this would be a PVB for your residential customers. It's going to protect water from being sucked back into the house. They do need to be installed at least 12 inches above your highest head, and they should always be closed when you blow out your system for the winter. Valves. Everyone's probably opened their valve box, been a little confused what's going on down there. Valves are what are separating your system into zones or stations, you might hear. They receive a signal from the controller. They're going to turn on. There's 3 main parts we can see on this diagram. There's the solenoid, the diaphragm, the bleed screw. The solenoid is the electromagnet that gets the signal from your clock. It's going to pull that plunger, lets water flow through. Each solenoid is going to have that wire, that common wire connection to close the circuit, and a wire specific that connects to a zone port in your controller. And then the bleed screw, great way to kind of open it up, flush some things out. It allows the diaphragm to lift and water to flow through. Great for testing the system out. And then your diaphragm blocks water flow when it's in the off position, and then it raises to allow that water through. Just a couple valve boxes in that picture. You can see everything going on. If you don't know where your valve box is, go take a walk around the yard, try to find it, typically in those green valve boxes. So lateral lines. Once one of those valves turns on, water is going to move into a lateral pipe, which runs to the sprinkler head in your yard for that zone. So you can kind of see that on the diagram there. Here's an underground section, generally about 6 inches underground. They continue on to other heads and stop at the edges of the zones. So if you see on this diagram, those pink lines running around are the lateral lines, and then the little blue dots are the heads. So you can see how it's bending around the yard. It's definitely, kind of the hidden areas of your sprinkler system. All right, we are flying through this sprinkler head types and drip irrigation. There's a lot of different equipment out there, so it's good to get used to it, kind of see what you have in your system, get an understanding of those types of heads. A lot of times you will see your system has multiple types of sprinkler heads. Just kind of something you got to get used to, especially when you're scheduling. So the main three types, pop-ups, also called spray heads, depending on where you are in the country, rotor heads, and then rotary nozzles that go on a pop-up head. So various brands, specification, features. Certain head types do work better than others depending on your location and the area. So we'll go over all these spray heads. 4, 6, 12 inches. They come in different sizes. You can see the precipitation rate's pretty high, 1 to 2 inches per hour. That's one of the highest you can get for all the different types. Radius 4 to 15 feet. So this is going to be for kind of smaller areas. This is probably the most common type of sprinkler head we do see. You can obviously see the arc can be adjustable. That's kind of the angle of the throw, or you can get a fixed nozzle. We usually recommend against those just because it's good to be able to line up exactly on the angle of your yard. We know not everyone has a perfect square yard. Um, they do perform pretty poorly in low and high pressure. They'll get that fine mist that you'll kind of see spraying out, going down the neighborhood, going into the air. But yeah, most common head here, best used for smaller areas. For code requirements, you do have to have a check valve and PRS, which is a pressure regulating stem, if you're installing new, and then minimum height of 4 inches for turf, 6 inches along curbs, and then 12 inches in the beds. See on there. This is a nice diagram of your spray head, kind of get a feel for what's going on in that piece of equipment. There is a good amount, so you can kind of see all the different sections, the parts. Obviously, those nozzles do come off and can be replaced. We'll talk about that on the system upgrades for sure. It's kind of an easy way to upgrade your system is changing those nozzles out. Rotor heads. They're typically gear driven. Those are the most common ones. There are still some of the old sprinkler heads you'll see on the market that are impact. Those are those old ones that kind of make that sound. You can handle much higher pressure on these. Also great for larger distances. If you have a big yard, these really do a great job covering everything. You want at least 16 feet wide for the area. Typically, people don't have rotors if they have a small yard, but we've seen it all. Let's see what we got on here. Arc can be adjusted. All these different brands and heads can be a little tricky because they all have their own instructions for adjusting these heads. If you do go out in your yard, take a look at what you got out there, mark the model number, mark the brand, and then you can go look up the manual for that, what equipment you need to adjust it, that kind of thing. So the precipitation rate's a lot lower, so you do need to run these for a longer amount of time. But there are some advantages to a precipitation rate being a little lower than the spray heads because it doesn't overwhelm that soil where you see the water running off. There's that impact rotor on the right, kind of the old school look, and then gear driven on the left. And then the third, newer types, these rotary rotator nozzles. They're kind of a hybrid of a rotor spray and a pop-up. They're very efficient, really low precipitation rate is that they put out. So you're not going to get a lot of runoff. That's kind of the nice part of these. They really have larger droplets. So you're preventing evaporation, specifically in an area like Aurora where we regularly see a 5 to 15 mile an hour wind kind of constantly. These do really well. Those big droplets of water don't kind of get swept away and wind blown. So they just land in on the turf. They look great out there, kind of look like the Bellagio fountain. But yeah, they just prevent evaporation, deliver more water to the area, but takes a little bit longer. You need to put some more time on your controller when you're scheduling these. And the best part is you can just throw these nozzles right into a pop-up head without having to take the actual body and the head out of the system. You just take the nozzle off, put these on. Great way to increase your efficiency. There's some pictures of them going. Couple of the brands you can see out there. You can see they make them for different sizing. So 8 to 14 feet, 13 to 18 feet, 17 to 24. Also make them for strips. Hunter MP Rotator is another example of this. All right, let's jump into drip systems. These are perfect for a little more spread out non-turf plant beds. You can see that drip line on the top left there. Main drip line and then spaghetti tubing goes off the main drip line. You deliver it straight to the plant. The beauty of these, it's going right to the root zone, directly to the plant. You don't get any water on the weeds. You're also not losing anything to evaporation, wind, anything like that. Keeping the drops right on there. They do run for quite a while, but you can definitely change up the gallons per hour on the emitter. So when you're at the store online, you can see zero point 0.5 gallons per hour, 4 gallons per hour, 2 gallons per hour. Really kind of look at what your plant needs and then buy that emitter for that specific one. But definitely easy to DIY. Drip systems, there's another type, inline drip. You'll see this one much better for a tight bed when you have a lot of plants, heavy vegetation. You can see the top left picture is an example of when not to use it. We're seeing there's a little gap. The emitter is actually built into the line. So there's going to be spaced out, whether it's 16 inches, 24 inches on that line. So if you have a nice, heavy, dense bed full of plants, this is a great thing. You kind of just meander it through the area and then you're delivering water to your plants. And you don't have to have all those separate spaghetti tubing, all those separate lines. Quick toolbox tip, just keep a stash of some of this stuff. I mean, same thing for the regular sprinkler heads. Stuff breaks, things happen in the morning. When you first turn it on, you might notice when you're walking out, oh, there's a head broken. So it's good to keep some things on hand, specifically for drip too, because they do get clogged up or they break or they tear. So just having some things like a compression coupler, goof plugs, punching tools, spaghetti tubing, emitters on hand. It's good to have on hand when you need it. Maintenance for drip is pretty simple though. You're just walking the line, you're checking the filter, repair the issues, reviewing your emitter placement and your plant health. All right, we are flying through everything here. Feel free to pause, stop, deep dive on whatever you want. If there's something that kind of catches your attention or something you want more information on. Controllers and scheduling. So, typical standard controllers, if you go into your garage or outside your house, you'll probably see, one of the many models of standard controllers. These are going to be manually programmed. Changes to scheduling has to be done manually. For your efficient scheduling, you're really going to have to pay a little bit more attention through the different weather patterns of irrigation season. Obviously, you're going to want less water in the shoulder seasons, May, early June. Once it starts heating up, you're going to want to adjust that controller, give a little bit more water. And then once September, October comes, you're going to drop it back down. Sometimes we do get, high heat periods of time in the summer. Other times it cools down. Unlike this last summer, hopefully we get a little bit of that this summer though. But these are the ones you're going to see everywhere. Controller basics, there's 1,000 varieties of controllers, but most controllers have kind of the same basic functions. Programs, days to waters, your zones, start times, run times, on and off, manual operation, and seasonal adjustments. So programs, they really allow you to package your zones together. So if I have some garden bed in my backyard, I have landscaping plants around my yard, and then I have my turf, my grass. I can do 3 separate programs, water them all separately while all still operating hand in hand. But the nice part is I don't have to pair all those together. So we're kind of separating everything out. Really helps keep things organized. And then watering days, setting those specific days, your intervals. I typically recommend choosing actual days on there just so you know when it's supposed to be running. You kind of know your water usage, expecting on those days how much you're going to use. So helpful in that way. You can kind of get to know your system, go through all these functions on your controller. Start time's the other big one. What time is your system going to actually run? When you do set it, you're going to have that option. Obviously, in Aurora, we have some landscape watering rules we'll go over that you can't water during certain times. And then run times. How long is that zone going to run for? And that's a really important part of it. We want to prevent runoff, but we still want to give enough water for this to be a healthy turf. And then seasonal adjustment, that kind of is a percentage. Typically, it's 100%, and then you can kind of go up and down from there and affects your entire schedule. So this allows you to make those quick adjustments on percentages in the shoulder seasons or when it's a little hot without having to go in, change your programs, change your run times, change your start times, everything. So nice, easy feature there. Get used to working on these controllers. Go out. I always recommend watching a YouTube video on your controller model type. Every controller has a video of someone going in there running through all the functions. If you're a visual learner, same thing with a manual, if you'd rather read that. But mess around with it, get used to using it. Really, once you spend some time with the controller, you'll figure out it's not as complicated as it looks. So yeah, it's the brain of the system. One wire for each zone. Worth checking the wire board to ensure there's no issues. If you haven't looked at it in a while, sometimes they get a little rusted out or disconnect. Those wires are going to go to the solenoids we talked about earlier. They're going to open the valves. They could be disconnected. They could be frayed. So take a look at them if you're having issues. As we talked about, Aurora has some landscape watering rules people have to follow. You'll see there's permanent restrictions. You have to be off between 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. and then max 3 days per week. And that's active May 1st through September 30th. Really, this is what you're going to want to do for an efficient system anyway. So great to follow these rules. Anytime between 10 and 6 p.m., you don't want to be watering anyway because of the evaporation effect. When it's sun outside and it's hitting your sprinkler system and it's running, you're losing about 40% of that water to evaporation, which is a lot and it adds up quickly. And then 3 days per week, you really don't want to overwater your turf. You can really cause the roots to shorten up if they're getting used to getting water 5, 6, 7 days a week. They won't dig down into the soil reservoir. You won't have that healthy turf. Helps prevent weeds when it has nice long roots. So something to think about. There's our watering times recommendations and a link to our page there below. If you're trying to figure out how long you should be watering, go on there, check it out. It's going to be based on your head type. So the one we just talked about, pop-ups, rotor heads, rotary, check those out and then water accordingly. If you have a lot of sun in your yard or if you have a lot of shade, that's going to affect your minutes. So this is not an end all be all, but it's a good start. Programming your schedule. This is funny. It's not plugged in at all in this picture. The guy's just holding it. Not sure why he's just holding it. I don't even think it would work. I mean, I guess if there's a battery in there, but start with the days per week. What days are you going to water? If you're mowing your lawn on a Saturday or someone does it on Thursday, don't water on those days. Determine your running times. We just talked about that a little bit. Program your start times using cycle soak, which we'll go over in a second, and then ensure your seasonal adjust is appropriate. And then when you do program your schedule, don't forget to turn it into auto or on. The amount of people we see that, have it off and think it's supposed to be running and it runs at 2 a.m. I never see it. So definitely make sure it is actually on. All right, irrigation efficiency best practices, proper scheduling. What does that mean? Well, cycle and soak is what we kind of preach. It's really a great technique. It helps prevent runoff, gets a deeper soak, deeper root growth, better drought resilience. If you've ever walked down your street or driven in the morning, you'll see kind of rivers of water flowing down the side of the road in a neighborhood. That's from runoff. Our soil is clay, so it really can't handle a whole lot of water at once. It gets overloaded that top couple inches, runs off. The grass will grow shorter roots. So, how can we manage runoff? How can we prevent water from running off our system? If we're going to pay for this water, if we're going to use it, we want our lawn to look good. We don't want it running down the street. So, one way to do it is cycle and soak. So, really breaking your times up into two or three different runs, and then letting it soak in between each of those runs. So, for example, if I want to run 12 minutes on my zone in my front yard, instead of running that 12 minutes at one time, where that water at 8, 9 minutes might start running off my yard, I'm going to break it up into three cycles, 4 minute run times. There's a 4 a.m., a 5 a.m., a 6 a.m. run time. So at 4 a.m., it's going to run for 4 minutes, and then I'm going to run the rest of my zones. It's going to do about an hour break, let it soak into the ground. Then we're going to run the next 4 minutes. You'll be amazed how quickly that soaks it up. It's kind of like a wet sponge versus a dry sponge. So definitely something to think about if you have a schedule. It's relatively simple to break it up. You can also just break it up into two if you'd like as well. Keep it a little more simple, but definitely worth doing. You'll see a major difference in the runoff. So let's go into troubleshooting a controller. If you're having trouble with your controller, not sure what's going on, some questions to ask yourself. Are the zone wires plugged in? Are the start times overlapping? That's pretty common if I set it to 4 a.m. and then let's say I have another one set to 4:20 a.m. and then it's supposed to run for 30 minutes. That's going to be an overlap. So you don't have that. And then seasonal adjust, is that set correctly? Are the minutes per zone normal? Are there multiple programs running regularly? Is the date and time on the controller correct? Seems basic, but check it out. A lot of times people will have an extra program C or D, and they won't know they're actually watering during that time. So once you do get used to your controller, go through all the programs, see what's actually running, see what's not running, just to make sure there's no surprises on that water bill. All right, scheduling. So this is specifically for drip. Drip can be a little tricky to schedule. Obviously, we're in gallons per hour, so we need a lot more time of running to get our plants going. Research your plants. What kind of plants do you have? Are they low water use, medium water use, high water use? Runtime minutes. I usually recommend starting low, see how the plants do, and then increase as you go. And then once you hit a certain amount, you'll figure that's a good amount of time to be watering for this plant or this area. And then, of course, if you have new plants, you're going to have to water those more frequently. You're going to want to get them established, get the root zone going. Obviously, we don't want to overwater and cause root rot, but definitely feel the soil after you're watering. Is it moist 6 inches deep? How long is it staying moist? Kind of something you can kind of test if you're watering in the morning, go out in the afternoon, feel around on the plant, see how it's doing. Has it really dried up or is it still a little moist? All right, this is the fun part here. Common issues and repairs. We see it all. Sprinkler systems break all the time. That's just kind of what happens. They're all susceptible to accidents, poor maintenance, or even poor design and installation when it was first put in. That's something we see as well. So every one of the components that isn't working properly can add up to a whole lot of waste on your system. You have one break, two breaks, three breaks. It really does add up. We see some, crazy high bills just from one sprinkler head being broken. So worth investigating, checking everything out. But let's go see. So when you go out there and check your system out, you know what's wrong, what's right. First thing is head-to-head coverage. If we have a system like an irrigation system, we need to make sure everything is creating a coverage area. So as you can see on these, what we actually want is the head next to the other head to actually hit that head, and the other head needs to hit the head that is hitting it. So kind of a little confusing when you go on your system, you'll notice it. One head might get 3 feet away from the head next to it. What about that 3 foot section next to the head? That's going to dry out, right? So heads that don't spray as far as the next head over. Sometimes it helps to block the spray of the adjacent head so you can see the stream more clearly. Fixes include, mapping the distance, measuring it out, and then choosing your nozzles or adjusting your nozzles. So if I have a 15-foot area where I need to hit that next head and it's 15 feet, in my head that I look at it, I look at the specs on it, it says 10 feet. I need to replace that with something that throws a little bit longer so we can reach that next head. Tilted head, one of the more common ones we see, not always kind of a nightmare situation, but over time, cement, dirt, the soil, the grass, things move, things adjust, things settle, specifically on new homes. So you'll see these tilted heads. Couple different ways to do it. First way would be just remove the solder around the head. Don't hit the pipe. Don't hit the head. Don't try to break it when you're out there. But just cut it out, cut around the head, dig down to where it connects, straighten it so it's perpendicular to the ground, even if it's on a slope. Lifting that head up, packing the soil around the head, and then straightening it out. Sometimes it'll move a little bit. We're not looking for perfect, but we definitely want to fix one that's, shooting straight up or shooting straight down because it's going to affect our intended coverage area. We're going to see some dry spots out there, some yellow spots. Definitely not what we want. Broken head. We see these all the time. This is really the worrying ones. They waste a whole lot of water on your system. Specifically, if you run your system for, let's say, 45 minutes, this is going to go 45 minutes nonstop running your water. So usually with broken heads, you're going to have to replace the head. Good news is we'll talk about rebates later, so it'll be low cost to you. Removing the sod, we think of sod and grass like cake. So you can kind of dig around it and then just slap it back on and it'll connect back in and it'll grow. So don't worry about killing your grass that way. Main thing is looking at the actual head. What do I have here? What's the head type? What's the model? What's the brand? Try to get a similar head type. You're really looking at that precipitation rate. How much water is it actually throwing out? And then spray distance when you're doing your nozzle. It should be the same as the previous head if the installs were appropriate for the location. I always say if the system worked great and something broke, replace it the same way. If it was bad, it was in a bad spot, it was already looking pretty shabby out there, I would say go ahead and change it up a little bit, change the head out, fix it to its location. Let's say it's on a slope, something like that. So, all right, next is low head drainage. People have probably seen this. If you're out there and you have a sloped yard, backyard, front yard, all that water, once the system turns off, is going to go somewhere, right? Gravity's going to bring it somewhere. It's going to bring it to the lowest head in the system. Now, older heads don't have what's called a check valve, so the water is going to leak out of that head. You might see a dirt spot around the head on the bottom. You might be wondering why it's struggling. The grass is struggling in this one area at the bottom of a hill. Typically, it's because of low head drainage. The good news is there's a super easy fix called a check valve. Nowadays, check valves are on the market built into heads. Typically, when you're looking at heads online or in the store, you can see it says it has a check valve installed. That's great. If you don't, you can actually buy one of these separate check valves and put it into a head so you can replace the sprinkler head with a new head, or you can just install a separate one. But it will require digging the head out. This will prevent water from draining out once the system's turned off. So Really great feature, keeps the water in there, stops that water waste. If you think about all the water in the lateral line, especially if it's a big system running through the whole summer and draining out every time, that's going to add up to some thousands of gallons, that's for sure. All right, high pressure misting. Another very common one. You could see beautiful rainbow picture in there, but not what we want. This is typically from, high pressure on your system, and spray heads don't do a good job of handling high pressure, and you'll get that really fine mist. It'll make that sound, that shh. You'll see it float away down your neighborhood. Not a good feeling when it's your own water going down the neighborhood there. So, what are some fixes? Couple different options. You can replace those older heads that you have with built-in pressure regulation heads. So if you don't have a really high pressure and you're just seeing a little bit of that fine mist, I recommend change those out. Look for a PRS, so a pressure regulation system on the actual head. That'll reduce it down, hopefully prevents that mist for you. If that's still a problem, or if you already have PRS and you're still seeing the problem, clearly you have some high pressure on the system. So you could definitely get a pressure regulation device on your valve, or it can be on the backflow. You can see this little black piece on that backflow is going to bring it down just so it's not so high. So some people get a full home system as well if you're having problems inside as well. So think about that. Think about why it's happening. Is it on your whole house or is it just the sprinkler system? All right, low pressure. Low pressure can be a thousand things. We hate seeing low pressure out in the field. Not a good feeling. Something is usually pretty bad if there's low pressure. So you can go into fixes. This is a great example of low pressure here. Tree root just growing straight into the valve, straight into the pipe. They typically constrict the actual pipe, so you're getting a lot less water. A lot of times when there's a big line break, a crack in the line, which we'll see coming up in a slide, that's going to cause low pressure because there's water leaking out, right? So you're going to see the head bobbing. It's not coming up all the way. So check your backflow to ensure the valves are opened all the way. Take a look in your valve box, look for tree roots. Also, your main water valve, it might need to be opened. Sometimes people don't open it all the way, and that can be a problem. Um, if it's only present in one single zone, that's going to be related just to that zone, just to that lateral line. So usually good to walk around, walk where you think the line is. Is there a soft spot that squishes down? You might have a pipe break. All right, clogged nozzle. Very common, super easy fix. Dirt, debris, stuff just gets inside of these sprinkler heads, and it blocks the actual spray pattern. A lot of times, if you see a dry spot in your front yard, run that zone. You might have a clogged nozzle that's creating like a V around the area. So super simple fix, especially when they're underground all year, all winter. They just get stuff in them. So you can use a rainbird tool, flathead screwdriver, scrape where the water comes out of the head while it's actually running. Typically, that'll kind of spur it out, and you'll see that full spray pattern go back. If that doesn't work, really the head's probably clogged. There's a little filter screen inside, if you remember from the diagram earlier. Take that out. You can see this one's pretty gunked up with stuff. Wash it, soak it in warm water, leave it in vinegar overnight. You can also just buy these filter screens and throw a new one in if it's really bad. But you'll see that stuff just clogs the head up. All right, misdirected head. This one, kind of hard to see there, but spraying directly at their deck and their patio area and the fake plants. So not doing its job. For a misdirected head like this, on a spray head, you can really just adjust it around, grip the actual head. You'll hear a clicking noise. Most people think they're breaking it. You're not actually breaking it. It's supposed to do that. Just rotate it around. If you do have a rotor or a rotary head, you may need to adjust that with a tool, or take the head out and readjust it on the actual install. But I'd recommend looking at the exact model type for that. Sunken head happens all the time. Soil settles, heads go down. If the head is just hitting the grass in front of it, or let's say the grass grows really tall and it's just hitting the grass right there where it is, it's going to get loose around there. It's going to sink slowly down. So sunken heads get worse and worse over time. So something you want to address as soon as you see something kind of go down below the surface. We want to make sure that water's going out into the yard. It's hitting its intended coverage area. It's not just watering the area around it. So something to do for this, pretty simple. Once you do one, I always say you'll do the next in about 5 minutes. Might take you a little bit of time for the first one, but you'll be a pro right after. So believe in yourself for that DIY. You're going to use a riser. So you're going to dig the head around, take the head off. of the lateral line, and then you're going to put a riser in. It's threaded. It goes right into where the head was installed. You can usually cut these to height. So if I see my head's only a couple inches below the surface, I only need 2 inches of riser. You can usually buy snap ones, or they break to 2 inches, or you can cut it to 2 inches. So just installing that in, and then you actually just put the head right back on top of the riser, screw it in, pack that dirt back in around it. Now your head's 1, 2, 3 inches taller, and you won't have that problem of the sunken head anymore. So worth doing. Try it out. See how it goes. Obstruction. These can be a little weird. Obviously, we're not going to rebuild an entire fence if it, got obstructed by a newly built fence or something. But something to think in mind if you are doing projects in the yard, or you're moving stuff around, or doing landscaping projects, is something going to block this sprinkler head? So you can see this one's blocked by a rock, that one's blocked by a fence. Couple of different things there. You can kind of deal with it, or you can actually move the actual head, right? So we can go in something called swing pipe. So that can actually connect to the lateral line where the head used to be. And then we can actually move that head to a different location with that pipe. It's flex, it's poly, so it moves. And you can move it, let's say, around a tree, put it back in, and now you're all fixed. So they make kits for them online. Definitely worth doing a YouTube video for this one. But yeah, you can also consider a longer rising head if it's a low thing that's blocking it. Let's say a little rock, you can maybe do a 12-inch head, 16-inch head, and kind of get above that. But typically, I recommend doing a swing pipe, moving it around. It'll really help in the long term, and it's really not too hard to do. Overspray. This is everywhere. If you're in Aurora, you see this. If you're in anywhere that waters with sprinklers, you see this, especially on these little patch areas. These parkway strips, sidewalk strips, tree lawns. We see a lot of overwatering. It can be tricky to irrigate on these thin areas. It's really not made for that. I always recommend taking that grass out and putting some water-wise landscaping in. Overspray fixes. Replacing the current heads with a different head type, different arc, distance, flow rate. They make specific nozzles for these strip areas, strip nozzles. So buy those, especially if you have, let's say, a 4-foot stretch of turf and you look at it and you have an 8-foot nozzle on it, that's not going to work. So replacing those. Over time, they've really gotten better with doing smaller distance throws on these heads. So there's even down to 4-foot throws now. So think about doing that, and then lowering your water times, just so you're not watering beyond the capacity of the soil, so it doesn't run off. But yeah, these are tricky spots, but definitely think about overspray. Think about where the water is ending up, and then how you can fix that. Sometimes it's just an adjustment. Sometimes it's just doing a quick adjustment on the head. Takes a couple minutes. Line break. This is the worst. Underground, you can't really see it until it flows up. You can see these are two examples of lines breaking underground. High volumes of water. You will be shocked if you leave a line break for a couple weeks, what happens with your bill. So what can you do for a line break? A lot of people are going to call a professional if they don't have piping experience. It's really not too hard, but it is a couple steps. You need a couple of supplies. It's really going to depend on the piping used in the system. Is it a poly system, or is it PVC? Is that hard white, or is it a poly 2 that's flexible? A little different here, but cutting that damaged section out, using pipe cutters, removing the section, and then using a coupler, barb fitting, or using cement glue, pipe clamps to ensure the seal is secure. But something you want to do immediately, you can always shut a zone off if you do have a line break and you want to let the rest of the system run, but you don't want to keep having that water waste. And let's say someone's going to fix it in a day or two, turn that zone off. It's going to be a lot of water. So broken valve. This is a filled valve box on both sides. Valves break. They are letting a lot of water through them. There's some components on there that do break. A couple of different things. You want to troubleshoot, is it the water supply problem, or is it an electrical problem? Because there's a couple different things that can happen with the valve. Are other zones running? Can the valve be manually turned on? Does the wiring look okay at the connection point between the controller and the valve solenoid? If the problem's electrical, it will most likely need a new solenoid or new wiring to the system. If the valve's not turning off, the diaphragm will need to be replaced. So a stuck valve, or maybe there's just something in there that's kind of getting stuck. A little piece of dirt, a little piece of debris. You can use a valve rebuilding kit, or you can just purchase a new valve. If you do have an older system with really old 20-year-old valves, I'd recommend just getting some new valves on there. They'll last a while too. But yeah, valve parts, they really do wear down. That's the diaphragm right here in the black on the right. But you can see there's just some parts that dirt and debris can get stuck into, and it'll just keep the valve going on. Not always running full blow on there, but it can be 2 gallons an hour, 3 gallons an hour, and you won't even notice it. So something to look for. Definitely keep an eye on it. You can really unscrew these, take a look, clean them out, and make sure everything's looking good. Horn drip line. These happen all the time. We got rabbits all over the place in Aurora, and they seem to like to chew on these. Dogs running through your yard, their paw, their will nail will cut the line. Kids messing with it, and over time, this stuff just kind of dies out. Especially if you're leaving your drip line way out, getting exposed by the sun, it's going to kind of shrivel up. Those aren't UV rated typically, so I would definitely make sure your lines are buried a little bit. It doesn't have to be completely buried, but tarp, mulch. But yeah, look around for your torn drip line. I always recommend walking the entire line, even if it's underground. You got to listen. You might really hear like a hissing sound or an odd sound coming from the line. What you can do for these torn drip lines is using couplers. So first, if you have a small hole, you can use a goof plug. Goof plug's on that bottom right, very bottom right there. It just plugs right into where an emitter used to be. But also, if there's a small little hole in your line, you can just plug that goof plug. It'll stop it. Now, let's say you have a larger tear. You're going to want to cut the torn area out with scissors or a pipe cutter. And then you're going to have two sides to a drip line. You're going to jam both those sides into a compression coupler or a barb coupler. You may have to warm it up a little bit just so it actually goes in. But don't forget to run the drip zone once you do the repair. Operate it, make sure it does have a tight seal. This is a really easy fix. People kind of freak out about torn drip lines, but it really is one of the easier fixes. It's the 50-cent part too. You just throw it on, attach them both, and run it, and it should be good to go. All right, those are the common issues and repairs. Obviously, we didn't do a deep dive on all of them, but most of them are DIY ready. Pulling up YouTube, going out in the yard, you can feel free to ask me any questions about doing that work. All right, big one, conducting an outdoor water assessment yourself. It's really easy to do DIY assessment. I recommend doing them a couple times a summer when you're running it, specifically beginning of the year when you first turn your system on, end of the year, and then a couple times during the summer. Make sure everything's running smooth. For the obstructions, for example, things grow. Plants grow, bushes grow, they cover sprinkler heads. So what your yard looks like at the beginning of the year might not be what it looks like in August. So do a quick walk around. We have a beautiful outdoor water assessment guidebook. Gives you a step-by-step breakdown, doing your own indoor or outdoor. On that website, you'll see that's also how you sign up for an outdoor water assessment on that website. Quick plug in there. But yeah, check out the guidebook, give some good examples. So here's some good steps: testing your clock, running the zones for 2, 3, 4 minutes each, just to get a feel for where everything is, and then mapping the zones out. You should have a little map. Obviously, when we do outdoor water assessments, we provide a nice map with everything. But map it out. Where are my zones? I want to know where everything is. Where's my valve boxes? Take notes, what type of heads I have, plant types, visible issues I found, the model of the head, the brand of the head too, and then measuring distance, making sure everything's looking good out there, and then prioritize. Sprinkler systems, specifically if you have a large yard and you have 200 heads, 100 heads, it can be a lot. Not all things need to get repaired, immediately, but try to prioritize. Okay, these are some broken heads. Let's get those fixed first. Those are wasting a whole lot of water. Here's a nice little controller breakdown. You can have it next to your controller. You can write down your start times, your watering days, your run times, just to keep everything clear. Sometimes it's annoying to go through and make sure, oh, what time am I running this again? I like to write it down, keep it next to the clock. You know exactly when things are supposed to be running. Here's a good example of mapping. You can request a sitemap from us, or just Google Maps, Google Earth, screenshot your property, and then just draw everything out. Draw your zip line or drip line out. This one is a good example of kind of mapping out your zones. Where's what? Take notes. What are you seeing? Write it down. You'll have that really helpful, for the home. And if you just bought a home, look around the controller. You might find a map, or you might find some notes for that too. All right, system upgrades. Plenty of people are having, they're at the 20-year mark on their system, 15-year mark on their system. This stuff gets old. These parts get old. They get outdated. There's some great new technology in the irrigation game these days. So something to take a look at. A couple different things. If you don't want to get a smart controllers are really great. They actually take the weather data for your exact area. They're going to adjust your watering schedule automatically. Really great. I recommend getting a smart controller. It's all on your phone. We offer great rebates on them. Uh, you can connect everything in, and we have hyper localized weather in Aurora, so it can be nice to have, a weather station that's down the street is impacting your smart controller because we're getting that exact data we want. Rain sensors, moisture sensors for your soil that can detect if it's raining or if it has rained, it will stop and pause your watering. High efficiency nozzles, plenty of those. We do offer rebates on them. We talked about those rotary or rotator nozzles. Those are an example of our high efficiency nozzles. And then check valves and PRS, we talked about that as well. All right, selecting your bodies and nozzles. Arc is your degree of coverage, radius is that throw distance, and then the brand. So make sure you're keeping things consistent. Look at the spec sheets online for things, get an idea of what you're looking at there. All right, rebates and irrigation. We do offer great rebate options. It includes $200 smart controller rebate. That's going to cover the full cost of most smart controllers. Rain sensors, pressure regulating heads, everything's kind of covered. Spray to drip conversions as well. Here's on our website as well, but you can see we offer great rebates. If you're looking at those high frequency nozzles or you're looking to change some heads out that are really old, $12 each, $9 each, $6 each covers most of the cost of those products. So you really can't beat that. It makes doing the upgrades really easy. If you're paying a sprinkler company to do them, you can still provide those parts. But if you're doing DIY, you're getting, besides the labor cost of yourself. All right, what other programs we offer? Irrigation and landscape. Well, outdoor water assessments, my program. Check us out. We'll come out, we'll walk through everything for you. If you have specific questions, we love tailoring these assessments to the customer. What do you got? What do you want? What do you want to talk about? What are you looking to do? Is there anything you're really concerned about? Grass replacement incentive program, GRIP, that's our turf replacement program. Very successful program, works really well. Generous rebates back per square foot this year. So check it out. And then free landscape designs. If you're looking at getting rid of some turf and doing some water-wise landscaping, we have designers that do great work. They'll give you a consultation. What do you like? What do you want? What kind of plants do you like? They'll do that for you. So free landscape design service, you really can't beat that. And then this is our outdoor water assessment, kind of an example. We do a property map, we locate the system inefficiencies, and then we kind of prioritize it for you. We want to say, hey, these are the things you got to address now. These are the things you can wait a little bit. And then we really focus on scheduling the controller. If you're just flat out confused about your controller and making a schedule on it, go to that auroragov.org/water assessment. We'll help you out. We'll make sure everything's all set. And we'll show you how to use that controller too, so you can, get comfortable using it. Know your flow, worth signing up for. Weekly recommended irrigation schedule. You get a monthly water use report. Are you using too much? Or are you using just the right amount for how much turf you have? It's really great data. If you're just moving into a house, you just bought a house, this is your first sprinkler system, first time watering, definitely sign up for this. Check it out. Get a nice baseline. See what you should be watering. It's all weather normalized. They take the weather that's, for recent times, how much you should have been using, how much you actually used. Um, you know, it's not in a rude way either. It's really a great first step. And just getting an understanding of your system and your past usage also takes a look at the indoor usage too. So definitely check it out. And that's at auroragov.org/know your flow. All right, that's all, folks. Thank you so much. Hopefully you learned something there. Definitely check out our website, auroragov.org/conservation. We have so many resources, so many programs, educational resources. Someone's always willing to talk to you. There's my email on there. If you have specific sprinkler questions or you have a weird sprinkler problem or something super specific, or something you can't figure out, feel free to shoot me an email. We go out on site all the time. We are ready to help, so definitely do that. But hopefully you enjoyed. So thanks.